Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt, who is the chief guest of the symposium, to deliver the inaugural address of the symposium. Justice Bhatt is currently a judge of the Supreme Court of India. He has previously served as the Chief Justice of Rajasthan High Court and a judge of the Delhi High Court. Justice Bhatt is known for having delivered landmark judgments in virtually every area of intellectual property law. He has also delivered landmark judgments in areas of drug regulation law, free speech, right to information law, and other areas of public law. Currently, Justice Bhatt is part of a bench of the Supreme Court, which is hearing a suo motu case regarding COVID-19 management. The bench is dealing with a host of issues which will form the subject matter of the symposium, including vaccine policy, right to health, health infrastructure, and intellectual property rights over therapeutics. Without further ado, I would now like to invite Justice Bhatt to deliver the inaugural address of the symposium as the chief.
Good morning. Thanks to Samvad, the National Law School of India University, for inviting me to speak at this symposium today on the crucially relevant subject of a healthcare framework for India. As we speak, we're witnessing an almost collapse, but certainly an enormous strain on our healthcare infrastructure, with thousands of persons dying on account of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has shown no discrimination and has struck all people, all sections of the people. The lack of access to healthcare facilities, ICU beds, oxygen, essential medication and vaccines has been the focus of our social debate, shall we say, for the last 1 month. This pandemic has made significant demands on healthcare systems across the world to provide equitable healthcare to all, to ensure that public health principles are followed, to find novel solutions for previously encountered healthcare challenges, and to rapidly develop new therapeutics and vaccines. For most countries, these healthcare demands have proven onerous, considering that few had long-standing systems in place for ongoing innovation before the pandemic struck. And I speak of what is called as the least developed countries in the TRIPS world, who practically have no infrastructure, no industry, and not to talk of any generic industry which can produce any pharmaceuticals, and are dependent on other producing countries which manufacture pharmaceuticals. In our country, challenges of inadequate infrastructure, access, and quality plague the system. This is complicated by the fact that there is a persistent shortage of human resources in health. We have 0.7 doctors available per 1,000 population as compared to the WHO recommended 1:1,000 ratio. The COVID-19 crisis is at a critical juncture that presents an opportunity to overhaul our healthcare framework and make it more robust, equitable, and inclusive. In strategizing a healthcare framework for India, we must remember that even emergency care remains an elusive entity for most, and a focus towards innovation must be complemented by policies to ensure that the benefits flow from the bottom of the pyramid. Empirical analysis shows that in India, about 70% of expenditure on health is out of pocket, and this is one of the highest in the world. Health out-of-pocket expenditure poses the largest risk to those living below and at the margins of the poverty line. According to WHO, as of 2017, India had attained most core capacities under the international health regulations of 2005 in relation to public health emergencies. Despite this, the pandemic appears to have caught India off guard, prompting an ad hoc response in stretching available legal provisions to authorize improvised executive action through the Epidemic Diseases Act and Disaster Management Act. A clear and decisive legal framework delineating the rights and duties of various stakeholders needs to be put in place towards addressing a public health emergency. The pandemic has placed an immense strain on the health, safety, and mental well-being of healthcare workers and various other workers providing essential frontline services. In addition to physical risks, The pandemic has placed extraordinary levels of psychological stress on health workers, exposed to high demand settings for long hours, living in constant fear of disease exposure while separated from family and facing social stigmatization. Before the pandemic hit, medical professionals were already at higher risk of suicide in all parts of the world. The WHO reported that a review of healthcare professionals found that 1 in 4 reported depression and anxiety, and 1 in 3 suffered insomnia during COVID-19. The WHO has also highlighted an alarming rise in reports of verbal harassment, discrimination, and physical violence against health workers in the wake of the pandemic. Unlike other sectors, there is presently no framework that addresses the occupational health and safety of healthcare workers in a specific manner to ensure clean and hygienic workplaces, quarantine facilities, or an adequate supply of PPEs, for example. The need of the hour is to review and upgrade wherever necessary national regulations and laws for occupational health and safety to ensure that all health workers have regulatory protection for their health and safety. We must bear in mind that the implementation of public health measures is carried out by officials closest to the ground. It is these officials who have the greatest access to information on the ground. District magistrates who administer health schemes, municipal corporations, panchayat members, and local administrators responsible for last mile access to rural healthcare centers. In the absence of a defined process of coordination and management during epidemics, it becomes the duty of persons in charge at the district level to contain any outbreak. The pandemic has shown us how strong decentralized governance can be effective in responding to emergencies in a timely and coordinated manner. Building strong healthcare networks, infrastructure, and facilities at the local level is crucial not only in the context of a pandemic, but for all healthcare needs. Across the world, responding to the COVID-19 challenges has been the most successful in decentralized health systems, working synchronously with decentralized governing systems. Healthcare systems are considered to be an interrelated connection between 6 building blocks: access to doctors and hospitals, medical equipment, manpower or health workforce, information, financing, and coordinated leadership. An almost entirely market-driven or market-led system that controls supplies of almost all critical inputs for medical care, drugs and other medical supplies, including diagnostic kits, protective equipment, and even patient transportation, and poor regulatory oversight by governments has resulted in frequent instances of shortages in supply, skewed distribution of essential inputs, and resultant spikes in their prices. In many states, or rather most states, except for a few private hospitals requisitioned by governments for treating patients with COVID-19, there has been little coordination between public and the private sector, mostly resulting in several reported instances of malpractices, such as refusal of treatment or charging exorbitant rates. Furthermore, a highly fragmented system of financing healthcare needs leads to both inefficiency for the system and inequity for the people, which only accentuates emergencies. Government schemes for health insurance, which have not reached significant coverage yet, coexist with several other private healthcare schemes, insurance schemes available to those who can afford to pay this premium, and the employer-provided schemes such as for government employees or for formal sector workers. Vast numbers who cannot afford these options are left out. The pandemic has also exposed the precarious living condition of casual wage laborers, including large migrant populations. Dependent largely on daily wages, this section of the labor force does not have the safety nets, and a drop in income can push them into dire straits. To address this, a social security architecture geared towards ensuring access to healthcare services, providing short-term relief for loss of income, and compensation for occupational hazards is necessary. It is of prime importance for healthcare systems to be able to strike a critical balance, adapt to the new paradigm of healthcare needs following from the pandemic through appropriate measures and mechanisms, but also remain cognizant of other priorities and commitments across the health sector. The right to health is an intrinsic part of our constitutional framework. The directive principles of state policy provide a basis for the right to health. Article 39E directs the state to secure the health of workers. Article 42 directs the state to ensure just and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. Article 47 casts a duty on the state to raise nutrition levels of standard of living of people and to improve public health. The Constitution also empowers panchayats and municipalities to strengthen the public health sector in the 11th schedule and Article 243G. In Bandhua Mukti Morcha, more than 30 years ago, the Supreme Court read the right to health into the right to life under Article 21. In another judgment, Vincent Panikur Langara, the court held that Article 21, that is the right to life, drew its life breath from directive principles, particularly Articles 39, 41, and 42, and held that the state was obliged to ensure the realization of the right to health. The court also said that the state had an obligation to make useful drugs available at reasonable prices so as to be within the common man's reach. Similarly, we have several other decisions which have reaffirmed the right to health as a fundamental right and integral to part of life. In another judgment rendered sometime in the 90s, the Ram Labhaya Bagga, the Supreme Court went on to endorse the state's responsibility to provide healthcare services. India's commitment to the international health regulations under the WHO, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is especially Article 25, and the International Covenant on Economic and Social, ICESR, especially Article 12, also binds it as a state party to enhance and provide adequate public services and a minimum standard of universal health care. Existing constitutional guarantees, precedents, and global commitments form a solid basis for a fundamental right to health in India. There are several existing legal mechanisms to aid in wider access to medication and a more inclusive healthcare policy. India's patent law, for example, defines an inventive step as one which is unique in that it is stricter than many other countries, as it requires an invention to involve a technical advance of economic significance or both, in addition to the fact that the invention is not obvious to a person skilled in the art. The keeping the peculiar needs of our country, Section 3D has been enacted, which is also controversial and has discussed amendments made to the Indian Patent Act. It was introduced due to fears surrounding the public health implications of the so-called evergreening, a concern also recognized by the Indian Technical Expert Group on patent law issues was that every effort should be made to provide drugs at affordable prices to the people. Firstly, Section 3D prohibits patents for derivatives, that is, new form of known substances, except if it can be shown that they provide a significantly enhanced efficacy. This provision is unique and makes the evergreening of pharmaceutical patents almost impossible. Additionally, this provision contains an absolute exception to patentability. It is an exclusion by stating that the mere discovery of any new property or new use or a known for a known substance is not considered patentable. This restrictive provision on this matter contrasts with the absolutely lenient approach in the US and Europe, to some extent in some of the European countries, in patenting second or subsequent medical uses of known pharmaceutical. By taking full advantage of these flexibilities in the TRIPS, India purposefully chose to implement that multilateral obligation in a manner that aims at striking a balance between the TRIPS minimum standards and protecting areas to medicines in line with the right to health. This approach has, however, also received opposition and criticism as to the TRIPS compliant nature of these provisions. And we have the Supreme Court ruling on this in the Novartis judgment. I will not get into details of this. There are also a couple of exceptions which are within TRIPS that could provide useful tools for developing countries in balancing access to patent protection. Notably, Article 31, referring to compulsory licensing. The use of a compulsory license would be a valuable tool for developing and also developed countries to increase generic production, importation, or domestic competition and thus reduce prices. We have in India provided for various exceptions to the monopoly rights of patents. In the context of a pandemic, we have Section 92, especially subsection 3, which empowers the central government to use these exceptions in the case of national emergencies, such as pandemics, or in the case of public non-commercial use, where if the central government is satisfied that compulsory license should be granted at any time to work the invention after the grant, it may make a declaration to that effect. An indication as to what might constitute national emergency was discussed in the Doha Declaration in para 5C, which gave countries the freedom to declare emergencies in case of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other epidemics, so long as they commit to principles of the TRIPS agreement. Section 100 of patents at any time after the application of a patent has been filed in the office or patent has been granted, the central government may use the invention for the purposes of the government. The central government can also acquire patents for public use under Section 102. So there is an entire repertoire of legal mechanisms and powers available with the central government to trigger off use of medication or devices or other systems which are crucial during pandemics or to control certain healthcare concerns. The need of the hour is to make good use of existing legal provisions to enhance access to essential medication, vaccines and equipment, and to ensure that public health concerns are addressed in a comprehensive, timely manner. The issues being discussed in today's symposium, the rules on clinical trials, patent and trade laws, and the right to health are especially topical. I would also add that I am not familiar with the entire range, but I would also say that there is some need for you to talk about data exclusivity, because when you apply for a patent or a compulsory license, or even use a public national emergency clause, the access to data is as crucial as the technology itself. So all these are debated today, and I'm very happy that you have chosen this topic in a timely manner. I hope that the convergence of ideas from healthcare experts, lawyers, practitioners, and policymakers here today will add to scholarship in a more robust, inclusive, equitable healthcare framework. In the long term, the state would be secure and its people safe if public healthcare access is available to all, just as in the case of universal primary education. I recollect having read that the 15th Finance Commission had recommended precisely this, that there should be a constitutional right to healthcare. Well, I think it is time that we seriously debated this and bring this into our statute book. The pandemic has brought healthcare concerns to the doorstep of all, especially the affluent. Till now, the inadequacies of the system and its lack of inclusiveness, its lack of transparency were not visible to the literate, the middle class, and the affluent, especially the low public spending on public health and its emphasis on private investment and entrepreneurship. The state had virtually retreated in the last 25 to 30 years in public investments on this very core and vital sector on wellness and public health systems, We hardly saw any new public hospitals available to the general public being constructed and set up. Certainly not at the pace that existed previously. So all this has led to privileging and completely not universalizing access to healthcare. The pandemic is a wake-up call, and it's a very urgent wake-up call that we have to invest more in healthcare systems. We have to invest more in providing access, and we have to enact rights that ensure health to all and access to medication, and not just in the pandemic. This is really a wake-up call, and I wish you all a great time in debating this, and let's hope that something really worthwhile emerges out of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justice Bhatt. I think Justice Bhatt's speech has perfectly set us on track to discuss all of the issues that we have highlighted in our concept note. I couldn't have imagined a better start to this symposium. Thank you so much, Justice Bhatt, for taking out time and addressing our gathering. Justice Bhatt, I'll definitely also make sure that the point on data exclusivity is brought up during the second panel, which is dedicated to patents and trade and their intersection with healthcare.